Welcome to Jeff and the Rabbi. Except today it's actually Jeff and the Rabbis, because we've got two rabbis today. We have a special guest. Rabbi Motzen is here today to be grilled by the panel in the Jeff and the Rabbi show. And an amazing topic today. I was very excited. So excited I even came in a day early. We're filming this show a day early because I'm so excited about this topic. School choice, one of my favorite topics. Now, in my opinion in school choice, why I like the topic so much, I think it's probably in this country one of the most important things to discuss that's not discussed. We talk about the economy and health care and food stamps, but we don't discuss school choice. And I think it's one of the most important things in the future of our country, in the future of our children. And people, there's one thing I've always said. I've always said to people, what do you think is the most dangerous gang in this country? And the people say, maybe it's the Crips, maybe it's the Bloods. I've always come back, nope, neither one. The most dangerous gang in this country, the future of our children, I think is the teachers union. But that's me. Now, I don't have many political opinions, but I'm just going to tell you, that's just my opinion. Because I think what we're doing to the children in this country by giving them no school choice pretty much in this country is dangerous. So I think today we're going to talk about what are the alternatives? What does school choice do? Why is it good for the country? So we have our special guest here, Rabbi Motzen, who this is his thing. So tell us.
Something I just want to say that I have a very personal angle here because I've watched Rabbi Motzen's career and how he's been advancing, right. And it's nice to be here. And everything was going along great until he decided to sit down with us. This, of course, might be a turn for the worse, but at least we were here when it ended.
You were here at the beginning of his career, and you're here at the end of his career as well. So
there you go.
Really good. So not to put you on the spot, but don't worry about a thing. They love us.
Well, I've been a fan of Jeff and the Rabbi for quite a while.
One of our three.
Yes.
Go ahead, yes.
One of your followers.
Yes, that's good.
You were correct on saying that school choice is not discussed enough, but it's actually gaining more momentum, and it's not even and it's getting past Democrat or Republican politics. You have bipartisan legislation in several states that school choice, private school choice, is becoming an option for families all across the country.
Good.
And the teachers' unions are, generally opposed to anything that smells of school choice. But the proponents, which are parents, are winning this fight.
Well, just one thing, and I don't want to interrupt you, but the winning the fight thing is what makes me nervous, because every single time you see success in school choice, whether it's in Washington, D.C., or in California, or in Louisiana, as soon as there's success, then the attacks come and school choice gets ended. And not just does it get ended in those areas, but the people that started it, their lives get destroyed. They get kicked out of the state, and it doesn't work that well. So do you really see success coming in school choice here?
So 43 states, 43 programs, in about 23 states have already enacted school choice. So yes, there has been movement. I was actually at the Indiana Supreme Court during the hearing for their discussion of whether or not the Indiana voucher was constitutional. It was the first time in a Supreme Court hearing on anything, let alone a school choice bill. And the final decision was 5-0.
Really?
5-0 in support of parents over the objections of the teachers union. So while it's true, there have been some maybe disappointing decisions, but I think we're getting somewhere.
What's the main issue? Is it really revolve around separation of church and state? I mean, what's the...
No, but that's what they claim.
And segregation, too, I heard, in Louisiana.
In Louisiana, it was about segregation, which is interesting that they do not want poor African-American children to go to better schools in the name of... I'm not sure what.
Well, in the name of so that it doesn't make that school now a white school instead of a black school, which is just obviously a loophole that Eric Holder is looking for to try to end school choice. But that's not to throw my political opinions in.
No, not at all. But actually, most of the students who benefit, the ones who benefit the most from school choice, are minority children, African-American children, urban children who otherwise don't have access to a good public education.
That's sad.
So. There are many forms of school choice. There are charter schools, which is supported perhaps more broadly. I work mostly on the private school choice side in many states, and we've seen success one state after another.
Wow. What about, I assume when you say private schools, you deal a lot with the religious schools, is that?
Mostly with the religious schools, but really we're supporting school choice on behalf of every child. Because perhaps of as someone who attended a Jewish private school and sent my kids to Jewish private schools, I see the benefit, and Rabbi Friedman could probably talk a little bit more about that, on the benefit of private school choice and private schooling. So we care that, and we want to see that everybody has that same opportunity. Because people say, well, there is school choice right now in America, if you can afford it. If you can afford to move to the suburbs, you can get the excellent public education, and you can buy a private education. But if you're poor and you live in certain neighborhoods and certain zip codes, you're doomed to failure, and that's too bad.
Well, how does anybody rightfully say they're against that? Let's say, obviously because progressives are for poor people, they say, and obviously in this area, well, I'm going to be honest, my kids, they go to private school, and they're going to get a great education. They go to a private Jewish school. They're going to go to college after that, and the college, I think, rate from our schools, probably 90-some% of the kids go to college. I've seen statistics in public schools with some minority groups, like the ACT said the people that took the test, those are people who were planning to go to college, and only like 16% of the people were really qualified and ready to go to college from a public school in certain minority groups. So how can anyone be against taking, like say what Governor Jindal did in South Carolina, taking groups from the poorest areas of the state, the people that are doomed to fail, have to fail, and put them in a charter school and all of a sudden watch the graduation rates go through the roof and then be against it?
So how about this? How about answer this question? The reason they're doing it is a cover-up. It's a way to get a hold of people and indoctrinate them, to get the government to pay for religious indoctrination of our children.
Ah. I mean, that's the opposing argument.
That's what they would say. Right? What would you say to that? This is just a big cover-up. You and all of your religious organizations, you're just trying to get a hold of kids and get them away from the public school, which gives them a secular education, and indoctrinate them with your religion.
For those who say that, I would ask them to go to, let's say I live in Ohio, go to inner city Cleveland, talk to the kids who benefit from the Cleveland Voucher Program, or Milwaukee, with those who have benefited from those programs, and see those families and see what vouchers have done for those families. This is not about religion. It's not about indoctrination. This is a lease on life, a new lease on life for them. As Jeff was saying about the graduation scores are significantly higher for those kids on vouchers, for those kids in private schools.
And it's the same child that was pulled out of the public school who was not going to graduate, you're talking about.
In Washington, D.C., they actually were able to measure that by people who tried to get into the voucher program and were not able to. So you have the exact same type of family.
But what happened to
and
that
the graduation rates were significantly higher.
But what happened to that poor woman in Washington, D.C. who instituted that voucher program? She's no longer living in Washington. She's in hiding somewhere. When Barack Obama, when he came to office, the only thing he cut in the entire budget was the voucher system in Washington, D.C. And I heard the poor woman that started, she was chased out of Washington. They just, because it succeeded so well.
Are you talking about the Chancellor, Michelle Rhee?
Yeah, I think that's who it
right,
was.
So she came in a little afterwards, but one of the things she said, and she was a proud Democrat, she was asked, well, how can you be for vouchers? And actually I've met Michelle Rhee several times, and she said, well, I originally agreed, and then I turned to these parents and said, well, did you try going to charter schools? And did you try getting into the lottery? And what happens to those kids who try to get in and didn't get into that lottery? So she said, I don't know what to tell them. They had no future. We wouldn't send our kids to those schools. So she ended up supporting vouchers, even though she was a lifelong Democrat, and it was not a very popular position for her because of her belief in, I have to be able to tell these parents and look at those kids in the eye and look at them as if it was my own child, and what would I do? I wouldn't take advantage of a voucher?
How could you not?
So she changed her position on that.
What about the religious angle, though? What if the kid doesn't want... see, I want my kids to go to religious school. I think they become healthy. I think they become better citizens. They know who they are. And after all, I think the morals that are found, in my case, in Judaism and the Torah, I think those make for good, healthy people.
I'm sorry. Now you got to stop right there. No. We don't teach morals in our schools.
Yeah. So what happens if you got a kid? The kid wants a good education, but does he have to pay the price? The only place he can go to get that is under religious auspices?
So it's interesting. In Cleveland, the voucher program in Cleveland went up to the Supreme Court. And the issue was it constitutional or not? Since 90-something% of the kids who received the voucher took it to Catholic or Christian or other religious schools. Happens to be there was not a single Jewish school in the program. And Good Israel, my organization, actually filed a brief in support of the program because we believed in the merits of the case. But the issue there was, is that the government supporting religion? Is that what the program was doing? And the Supreme Court found no. The money is going to parents who are then choosing what to do with that voucher, and they can choose between a religious school. There was and there is other options that are not religious. You can go to independent school. You don't have to go to religious school.
So wait, a parent has the right to choose?
I know it's a concept that's
but because it is because as Rabbi Freeman pointed out, in a religious school you're going to be taught morals, you're going to be taught these different things, but in the public school system today you're taught you're taught sex ed in kindergarten, which I think according to public school people you have to have. You're taught about that you can go in any bathroom if you decide you're not a man or a woman, but you're a transvestite or whatever it happens to be. These great education things are now going to be lost if you go to a religious school, because and the government, I think, is pretty happy getting into the minds of children at an early age and bringing them up they want to bring them. So now
I think a mother really only has choice until birth.
Right. Once the kid's born.
Once the kid's born, you lose your choice. Right. Up until then, you have to. We stand up for your right to free choice until.
Well, I hate to break this to you, but public schooling up till recently was religious. It was just Protestant, not Catholic. I mean, the Catholics created their own school system because of differences in what was called public education. Then they had these things called Blaine Amendments, which forbade any money going to religious institutions, which was to stop money going to Catholic schools. They taught the Bible in public schools.
And I think the public school education, probably in the 50s, back when you guys were alive, I don't know, I wasn't born until the late 90s, but back then I think it was probably pretty good. Now it's not. It's really not. And I wouldn't let my kids go to public school. I wouldn't let them even drive past the public school. I get a little nervous.
There are great public schools. I'm not against public schools. We're not against public schools. We're against good public schools. We just think that actually if you would have competition between private schools and public schools, and the public schools felt the competition, then the public schools would improve too. You'd have either good public schools, or in those who weren't would
go away.
Unfortunately, go away. I mean, if you're not serving the public, then maybe there's not a reason for you to exist.
This is what I think one of your issues is. You got to stop talking sense when you're dealing in the public arena, because that's the problem. Because that kind of concept works really well in business. It works really well everywhere else. Why would we expect that to work in our school system just because it works everywhere else?
Yeah, I mean, you have a smartphone?
I do.
You have a smartphone. If it wasn't for competition, you'd still be dialing with Ma Bell and have a little rotary phone with still attached, right?
Which is probably what they have in the public school system right now. A little black phone. That's how they work. But I agree, but I think we go back to the religious angle of this thing is because, and I think Rabbi Freeman's right, there is a lot more to it. One, you are taking them out of that public education, which, listen, we want to educate these kids in our image as a progressive, where someone from the other side of this thing would say, well, maybe we want to educate these kids under a different image, maybe the image of God and the image of Torah or the image of the New Testament, but an image where there are morals and where they might not go out and punch 75-year-old ladies in the face when they're walking down the street, and that might be what's offending people. I don't know.
How about what do you say to a citizen who says, I don't want my tax dollars to go for a child to receive a Catholic education? Why should my tax dollars be paying for this guy to teach the catechism to students?
That's an excellent question, and that's been brought up by the Supreme Court. Now, people don't have to agree with every decision of the Supreme Court. Many people in this country obviously don't. But in the case of a voucher, we already said the money is going to parents, and the parents are deciding what to do with it. There is no difference between your Social Security check that a person decides to donate to his church has any connection to you than you as a taxpayer giving money to a Catholic school because the state gave money to that parent to decide where to educate their child, and then that parent decided to go to Catholic school. In the case, let's say Georgia, and there's about a dozen other states, they have a different program called a tax credit, scholarship tax credit. Works a little different than a voucher, and it's also gone to the Supreme Court. And there, it's 3 steps removed. So I'll try to make it as simple as possible. Right now, you can, let's say, take Georgia. We're sitting in Atlanta. You can make a donation of $2,500 or $10,000 if you're S Corp, and you give that money to a scholarship organization. That nonprofit scholarship organization takes that money from you and from many others, collects all that, pools it together, and gives out scholarships to low-income students, students who need scholarships, and they want to attend a private school. Those parents can choose private religious schools or private other independent schools and allow them to receive the free choice of education that they deserve. Now, the state of Georgia does one thing. They give a dollar-for-dollar tax credit for to the donor. That is where they start and where they end. They incentivize the behavior of giving money to the scholarship organization. They want kids to get a good education. Let's remember now, a donor is making a donation to a scholarship organization who makes a donation, who gives a scholarship to a parent, who then decides which school to go to.
How much scholarship does that parent get? Do they get $1.00 amount, or do they get a tuition?
So the parents, the maximum scholarship is over $9,000, which is about the amount they spend on public school kids. The program has over $50 million.
But what if they go to a private school and the private school says that we're $15,000? So they got $9,000, but they still have to come up with another $4,000, $5,000 out of pocket, which they wouldn't have had to do if they went to public school.
That's true, but that's $5,000 closer than they would have otherwise not. They would have not have even the option if they were $15,000 away from full tuition. That program has allowed thousands of kids to attend school. In fact, in the Jewish community, that program has raised over $13 million for Jewish education since 2008. It has tremendously benefited the Jewish community. It has benefited, of course, hundreds of millions of dollars to everybody else in the state of Georgia. Now, for anybody to argue that money was your taxpayer dollar going towards that religious school is at least 3 steps removed. And that's what went up to the Supreme Court in Arizona.
Definitely that one.
They had the similar issue. And the Supreme Court justices asked, like, what's the connection between you as a taxpayer and that donation?
That one's different. But why can't we just simply do this, which I'm sure you've discussed? Okay, Washington, D.C., what do they pay? I'm using that one as an example. What, $15,000, $16,000 per child in public schools? Even more than that now. I know it's in the mid. In most of the states, it's over $10,000 now. I mean, obviously, they feel if they pour more money into it, they'll get better education, but it's usually the opposite. Why can't we simply take that amount of money and we say to Rabbi Friedman, your children, you want to get educated? I don't care if you send them to Catholic school, public school, any kind of school. You now have $12,000, whatever the number is, to get your kid educated. Now, every school that's got to be involved, whether it's a religious school or a secular school, has to have some standards, some public standards of what they're going to teach and what it counts. But do that. If you gave Rabbi Friedman the choice, you're right, and then the answer will be, hey, but what about that poor public school down the street? It might be gone. But as you said, it might not be. They might hire teachers. They might not be able to have a teachers union anymore because they have to hire better teachers. But if they're gone, there's going to be 10 other people vying for that position to build a school down there to get $12,000 per student to do it. Isn't everybody happy that way? And if you're not happy with your school, Rabbi Friedman, you can send them to the other school.
Then you said just get out of this public school business. There should be no public school business. Religious groups, corporations, interest groups could set up schools. If they satisfy government requirements for a school, every child upon turning 5 years old gives a credit, they take it in, they turn it into the school builds the government sends them a check for the tuition, and the government's out of the public school business.
Sounds logical.
Who would be the loser in that?
I can only think of one group that would be the loser in that. That would be the government. I mean,
well, I think this is the idea that Dr. Milton Friedman presented in the 1950s. It's still a very popular idea. It's actually gained in popularity the last few decades. And that's exactly what he proposed. He didn't say to get rid of public schools. He just said that those let them compete.
Well, what's the problem? Is it the media in this country? What's the problem that why your idea, what you do, is not the biggest? Because to me, it's the most important thing. We live in a society where obviously our kids grow up and are not able now to compete around the world. Your idea, what you're talking about, what you sell, would solve that problem. Why are we not all talking about this every day?
People should be talking about it every day. And actually, it's not just competing around the world. Condoleezza Rice has publicly said this, and it's a great, if you listen, you can watch online, her and Joel Klein having a discussion about this, that it's a national security issue as well.
I agree.
The armed forces cannot find enough people who can pass their basic tests. Besides for physically, we've heard about the obesity problem that people can't physically get into armed forces, but they can't pass the basic tests. We need people to, nowadays a lot of warfare is done with technology, even basic, everything is with technology and with complicated things that, or maybe not so complicated, which people need basic math, basic education, which they're not getting.
They're not getting on the public
and
schools.
they're not finding enough people to pass these tests, basic tests. Condoleezza Rice said this is a national security issue. If we don't have enough Americans to fill those jobs, what are we going to do?
So is it you need to get on the media? I mean, I know you're on one of the biggest media outlets right now on the Jeff and the
Right
Rabbi, but there's like those smaller guys, ABC, NBC, CNN. Well, CNN might be a little smaller, but I mean, you actually could. I mean, is it just because we have such a progressive media system out there that this is not what we're talking about?
It's hard to break through when you have everyone wants to talk about scandals and wants to talk about the latest weather emergency more than what's really important, like the future of our country. So it's hard to get the noise through the media. National School Choice Week's coming the end of January. That makes a little bit of
I blocked that out on my calendar.
Did you know that?
Yeah, I'm taking my whole family. We're taking off, and we're going to be doing all the National School Choice observances.
Yellow flag, yellow scarves all around the state capitals. All around
right. Yeah,
I got to take off my pink breast cancer band and put on my yellow.
I was wondering why all the stores were selling all those yellow flags and yellow scarves.
I know it wasn't Georgia Tech. They're not winning because of them.
But it is spreading. You have. I was at a conference in Boston. Jeb Bush, Governor Jeb Bush has a foundation, and you have a interesting broad spectrum of people attending these conferences and speaking. You had Mayor Rahm Emanuel at his conference, and that's Jeb Bush and Rahm Emanuel on the same podium.
To tell you the truth, I think Rahm Emanuel, I believe, attended a Jewish private school. At least part of his life.
I don't know if he learned that much there, but he did attend.
But he fought the teachers' union.
He did. He did for a little bit. He did.
And again, these are things that are these issues that are spreading. And of course, we need to spread it. We need to forward these.
Well,
I apologize.
I know one thing that I've observed, and this is like again all this anecdotal evidence, but it just seems to me we hear about all these horrific crimes that take place in schools, all these school shootings and all these horrible things, but they happen at public schools. When they happen, I'm not talking about when someone comes in from the outside, but we're talking about someone from the student body. A student shows up, and no one can prove or anything, but I just have this nagging feeling inside of me that children who receive a certain type of religious instruction and who hear about a higher authority and who hear about the part of their life that they have responsibility to something greater than themselves don't tend to wreak mayhem on their classes because they're given a sense of direction and value in life. And it's the absence of that in the secular school system that is really making kids unhealthy, and we see horrible results because of that.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that's the real answer, but God forbid we allow God into that question. I mean, that really is the answer, and I think that's what progressives fight so hard. But with a typical school choice voucher type system, you can have that. And I think you probably would find, interesting enough, everybody, we don't want God in our schools. You would probably find more people, even if there was a choice of secular private schools and religious private schools, parochial schools, I think you'd find more people would be sending their children to the parochial school or to the religious school. And even though we think, oh no, nobody wants to have God in schools, I have a feeling that's where they would send their children.
Or some people would get together and make some better secular schools.
Yep.
They actually just did a study, actually came from Georgia, regarding what parents want out of schools, and actually religion is high up there, that it is a factor. People think it's academics, which is a factor, safety. It's not just something always on something you can put on a report card. Sometimes it's the values, sometimes it's the safety, which you can't measure. But parents are looking for other things other than report cards. And even suburban schools, people think that you live in the suburbs, so my public school is great. In general, by the way, everybody thinks their public school is great. It's the public school down the block that stinks, right? But it's the closer you look at the scores, it's not so true. Schools aren't as great as we think they are, number one. And also I think as a responsibility, definitely from as far as the Jewish people, but I think every citizen, we have to be responsible not just for our own kids' education, but it's really our responsibility to make sure that others have an excellent education.
We have to live with their children, so I think.
Yes, they're the ones. Yeah, if not, they're the ones who are going to be
punching your.
Right, it's your neighbors.
In the face,
if you want to be in that neighborhood. So there's an actual interesting Talmud that discusses Rabbi ben Gamla, He was a high priest, and he is credited with saving Torah from being forgotten from the Jewish people. Now, we just celebrated Hanukkah, which in the Al Anisim prayer, we say that the Greeks, the Syrian Greeks, were trying to forget or make us forget the Torah. Here it says that we would have forgotten it ourselves had it not been for Rabbi Shua ben Gamla. What did he do? He created a public school system in the Jewish community. What happened? He saw the orphans weren't learning Torah from their parents, which is way, once upon a time, everyone studied at home. Right. So he created a school system for everyone so that the orphans would have a place to learn. But it says that had it not been for him, Torah would have been completely forgotten. So Rabbi Weinberg, who was dean of the rabbinical school that both Rabbi Friedman and I attended, different years, he says, it should have said that the orphans wouldn't have studied Torah. Why does it say nobody? Everybody would have forgotten Torah. And he says, because if you have a system that doesn't educate everybody, if it doesn't educate the poor, the orphans, the kids with disabilities, your educational system is doomed to failure. If we have an American education system that doesn't educate everyone, don't think that you're safe. Don't sit at home going, I'm in the suburbs, I'm fine, let whatever happens in the inner city let happen there. It's going to happen to your system is not safe. It is not a good educational system if it doesn't serve everybody.
Wow. Then when people say maybe we should fix the public schools.
Do we have time?
Yeah, sure, we have time.
Do we have time to fix the public school system?
No,
do we have 20 years?
Well, because
Look at the kid, the kindergarten kid right now, who is about to get either a voucher or some politician telling him, in 20 years, I'll have it fixed. By the time I'm done, it will be fixed. He doesn't have time. Kids only
But I think you made a good point. I think they might have spent the last 20 years fixing the public school system in the image the government in the image they wanted it to be fixed in. I don't think it's broken in a lot of people's opinion.
Right.
Well, they are learning sex education.
They've been fixing it since the 60s.
And they've
no
done
doubt
a
about
job.
it. It's been
We've been spending, if you've seen the Waiting for Superman movie,
I heard
at least once.
I've
seen it at least 4 or 5 times. I've spoken at their openings in several places. We've spent like this, and results like this.
Unfortunately, Waiting for Superman did not get nominated or did not win any kind of awards because Hollywood was not going to give that movie any awards.
And who produced that movie?
Well, that's true.
One of the most liberal filmmakers.
Right, but the problem is that topic did not sit well with progressive Hollywood, which is a shame because something like that movie itself, well, it did, but they weren't. The rest of them weren't too happy. But I think that's the issue is maybe we don't have time because I think they took 40 years to build up a good progressive school system, and look what it's done to our country. Do you have another? But school vouchers kind of undo that really quick.
You totally undo the system because you give people an option right away. You don't wait 20 years. The person right now, if you give a kid a voucher, they can leave right now and have a chance for better education. One story that is a very moving story, also back in Ohio, though I've dealt with a lot of states, but that's my home state. The Senate president, Senator Dick Finan, was sitting in his office one night right when the Cleveland voucher was about to be reauthorized. And he gets a phone call about 10 o'clock at night. He's sitting in his office. Phone rings. And he picks it up. And the lady, on the other hand, clearly was quite surprised that anybody picked up the phone. She was probably planning to leave a message. And she was even more shocked when she realized she was talking to the Senate president himself. But Senator Finan told me that when he finished that phone call, I think he was more surprised than she was. She tells him that she's a parent of 3 children, all of them from different fathers. And each one of their fathers is dead. She's from Cleveland. She's not Catholic. But because of the voucher program, she sends her children to Catholic schools. And she said, Senator, I don't know what I would do without the voucher program. Please make sure it doesn't end because I don't want my kids to end up dead like their fathers. So vouchers is not just about a better education or a private education or religious education. In some cases, we are literally giving these kids a life. And if that doesn't motivate anybody, I don't know what will.
Wow. I think that kind of says it all right there.
There you go.
You couldn't have said it better than that, and I couldn't agree more.
Well,
I tell you. Wow. Enlightening. I think, as I said, this has always been one of my favorite topics because I think it's avoided so much. But as Rabbi just said right here, it is life. It is life. You're getting kids life, and you're giving them a chance for life and to succeed and for the children to have life in a great country.
And I could just make a plug for anybody who is watching and is looking at their kid in the living room going, hey, does this program they're talking about affect my child? Well, there are programs in many states. In many states, they are just beginning to push legislation. In states that you would never imagine, there are efforts right now and programs that could, in some cases, give free education or close to free education, including Jewish day schools. And I encourage anybody to look up certain websites and look up programs that are available. There's Friedman Foundation, www.edchoice.org. There's Alliance for School Choice has a website. If anybody wants to email me, it's at staterelations@agudath-israel, AGUDATHISRAEL.org. staterelations@agudath-israel.org, where I'd be happy to share any information about programs that exist or will soon exist. But we need parents, we need business leaders to take leadership roles and push this. Like you said, it's not talked about enough, and we need it. Besides for the fact that if someone is a businessman and wants to donate to these scholarship tax credit programs, they can have a tax benefit and benefit kids.
Wow. Amazing. Good show. I think this is an excellent show. I'm excited.
Right.
We might get some hits on this one.
Are people going to get like pop-ups for yellow scarves?
I think that could happen. It could happen when you go there. It's exciting. Great show. I think this one is, listen, you guys should sit around and talk about this one. This affects your future. All right. And great. And we'll see you next week on another informative and excellent episode of Jeff and the Rabbi.
Yeah.